Welcome to In Focus with Silvana Pavlovska, broadcasting from Melbourne, Australia. Today is the 20th of April 2024, and as part of our series dedicated to the Macedonian question, we have been examining and sharing with you the PRESPA agreement as cultural genocide of the Macedonian national identity, a scholarly paper produced by the eminent Professor Dr. Igor Janev, an expert on international law. We are looking at chapter 6 of this publication, and this will be part 3 of chapter 6. The professor says, let us now recapitulate and reiterate the major conclusions that we have derived from our research. The additional conditions imposed on Macedonia for its admission to the United Nations constitute a clear violation of Article 4, Paragraph 1, Article 2, Paragraph 1, and Article 2, Paragraph 7 of the Charter, and define a discriminatory legal status of the state as a UN member, again in violation of Article 2, Paragraph 1, combined with the permanent mechanisms for illegal foreign interference in domestic jurisdiction from state that doesn't recognize Macedonia at all, and especially its national and legal judicial identity. The responsibility of the United Nations Organization for violation of the Charter's provisions, delicta omissions, derives from the duty of the organization to respect the basic rights of the states, either as applicants to the UN membership or as UN members, and even out scope of UN system, particularly its personality, which are protected by the principles of international law enshrined in the mentioned articles of the UN Charter. The basic rights of the state were affected, even generally out of scope of the UN organization, such as sovereign equality, in violation of contractual relationship between the UN and the state as parties in the Treaty of Charter. The character of these violations is of the ultra vires type, with respect to the legal norms of the Charter as a multilateral treaty. The violations of Articles 4, Paragraph 1, 2, Paragraph 1, and 2, Paragraph 7 involve the judicial personalities of both the organization and the Macedonian state, since the external organization's rights were involved, as rights not covered only by membership rights, but generally and externally as a person. However, despite of an apparent ultra vires acts related to the UN Security Council Resolution 817, UNGA Resolution 47/225, and supported by ill-posed UN Security Council Resolution 845, the Macedonian government and its complete ignorance continued to negotiate under the misconception and an illusion that nothing was wrong with those resolutions and obligations until finally the PRESPA agreement, or PA, was concluded. And even after the conclusion of the PA, the Macedonian government and the political elite continued to believe that this treaty was legitimate, legally valid, with proper legal grounds, and they never doubted its legality. In contrast to that myth and an illusion, we proved in our study, that the PA violated Jus Cogens norms and established permanent illegal framework for cultural oppression and cultural genocide, as it imposes wide-scale spectre of domestic administrative measures for censorship and restrictions or bans on usage of national identity designations, contrary to the basic norm of the human rights law. Namely, the PRESPA agreement is by itself in conflict with Jus Cogens norms of international law of ethnocide, combined with established tools for violations of legal elements, standards and matters that belong stricto sensu in the domain of the sovereign domestic jurisdiction, even on permanent basis, an irrevocable mechanism, system of violations. PRESPA agreement provisions with the mechanisms for permanent systemic intervention into internal and external affairs of the second party, that is the nameless international subject, Macedonia, of course, blatantly derogate human dignity of states' nationals, that is the ethnic Macedonians, and their cultural rights and freedoms to the magnitude of ethnocide, as a form of genocide. After the PRESPA agreement was entered into force, the rights of the Macedonian nationals in the Hellenic Republic were not recognized, since their national identity ceased to be recognized by both states in accordance with the PRESPA agreement. As a consequence, the Macedonian national minority was deprived from the basic human rights provided by international law to minorities. As for rights of the state, the PRESPA agreement violated the basic international norms of non-discrimination with respect to representation in the system of international organizational law, particularly the UN law, since the organization subjected its member to illegal misrepresentation, as Macedonia was treated as a sort of an imposter with its constitutional national name, that is a nameless state, member state. Therefore, the PRESPA agreement violates Article 53 of the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. As for the Macedonian will, of the people, that is the people's will, to change its national name, the referendum in Macedonia held on the 30th of September 2018 was a complete disaster with a turnout of only 36.9%, well below of the census condition of 50%. The question with respect to the change of the name was intentionally and explicitly associated with the question regarding membership to EU and NATO, but still the referendum was unsuccessful. It is therefore abundantly clear that for Macedonian people, the PRESPA agreement is an unsustainable treaty and that it represents a national humiliation. So ethnic Macedonians, in fact, rejected the idea of an imposed artificial identity and any such estranged or alienated modification. I think we'll end this part there. So that was actually, what did we say at the start? It was part 3 of our chapter 6 of Professor Dr. Igor Janev publication. We shall continue with part 4 shortly. So we'll see you shortly. Thank you for your attention. I'll see you shortly.